Hello creative people, welcome back to my channel. This is Evelyn Green, I am a Spanish illustrator, and today I'm going to show you how to unlock the power of Procreate's screen and multiply modes to create these beautiful and super easy effects with just one color. So grab your favorite brushes and let's dive right into it. To truly understand these two modes, we'll create 3 circles using the same color. Here I'm using green since it's the color that I'll be using later, but it works exactly the same with whatever color that you want to use. So let's open 3 layers stacked on top of each other, each holding a circle. There we go. We've got the middle circle, and here our baseline is going to sit comfortably in normal mode, so let's name it normal. We've got the left circle, and here is where our multiply layer is going to sit, so let's name it multiply. And we've got the right circle, which will reside on the screen layer, so we are going to rename it screen. So now let's explain how these two modes work. I'm going to start with the multiply mode, and I want you to imagine this mode as a shadow master. When you set this layer to multiply, it interacts with the colors below it, creating a darkening effect. The darker you color you paint on the layer, the deeper the shadows become on the layer beneath. However, when we set the circle on the right to screen, the complete opposite happens. This mode lightens the color underneath, just like a light source, and the brighter the color that you paint on the layer, the lighter the effect on the layer below. See how our green circle glows on the normal circle? And on the white background, it almost disappears completely, mimicking the intense brightness of a light source. So think of multiply as your shadows, darkening the colors underneath, while screen is your light source, making things much brighter. Now that we understand these basic concepts, let's see how we can apply this to create this. And we're going to start by creating a beautiful quilt-like pattern. Let's open a new layer, and to match the final result, I'm gonna name it blanket. This layer will be the foundation of our cozy pattern. So I'm going to grab my round brush, although Procreate's default round brush would work just as fine, and I'm going to create the foundation of the blanket. This layer is going to act as the base of the fabric. And now that the base is ready, here comes the fun part. I'm going to use the multiply mode to create the defining lines of our quilt pattern. So I'm going to open a new layer, and I'm going to clip it to the blanket layer, so the multiplied lines will only appear within the borders of our blanket base. I'm going to set the layer to multiply, and since multiply is our shadow master, there's no need to change to a darker color, as the lines we draw on this mode will darken the blanket layer beneath, creating the illusion of a shadow. And for a touch of realism and texture, I'm using my trusty Smooth Shades brush set to a medium opacity. Once the vertical lines of the pattern are done, let's do the same for the horizontal lines. So let's open a new layer and set it to multiply, just like we did before. This layer will interact with the existing multiply lines, creating a very cool effect. Because we're placing this new layer below the previous multiply layer with the vertical lines, the areas where they overlap will darken even more and create a deeper shade of green, mimicking the intersection points of a real quilt. But we need a bit more depth and realism, and here's where screen mode comes in. So let's open a new layer below the existing multiply layers and set it to screen mode. I'm keeping my smooth shades brush with medium opacity, but I'm gonna downsize it a bit for a more realistic effect, and I'm going to draw some vertical lines. And see that effect? The screen acts like a light source, so these lines lighten the blanket layer beneath. But since the screen layer sits below the multiply layers, it also lightens the color that it encounters, creating a nice contrasting effect. This interplay of light and shadow is what brings our quilt pattern to life. So let's repeat this step, opening a new layer, also set to screen mode for our horizontal lines. And even though we could leave it here, let's push the boundaries and add even more dimension. Let's open a new layer and set it to multiply. I'll keep the same brush and opacity, but I'm going to reduce its size a bit for a more interesting effect. Now let's draw some vertical lines on top of the existing multiply lines. Remember, multiply darkens the color below, so as we draw the lines, they'll interact with existing shadows, creating an even deeper and richer effect. And I'm going to do exactly the same for the horizontal lines on a new layer set to multiply. So as you can see, these layering effects will add loads of dimension to your quilt pattern, creating a more intricate and visually interesting design. And of course, feel free to experiment with the placement and density of these layers to achieve the perfect level of depth and texture for your quilt. But let's take our quilt to the next level of realism. So let's open a new layer set to multiply again. But this time we'll switch things up a bit and grab my trusty denim brush to add a subtle texture effect and mimic the natural texture of fabric. This is going to darken the existing colors, and it's going to add a hint of fabric-like texture to the pattern. I also like to enhance this fabric texture using the denim brush by adding an extra screen layer below all the multiply layers. And voila, there we have it. Our beautiful quilt is complete and looking ever so cozy, and we achieved this stunning effect using just one color thanks to the power of the multiply and screen modes. So now let's focus on how we can use these two modes to draw all the things, like for example, some grass. And the first step to creating grass is laying down the foundation, of course. So to do that, I'll create a new layer just for it and call it grass. I'm going to choose my favorite shade of green, and I'm going to use a round brush for this initial layer. Once we have our base layer down, it's time to add some depth. This is where the multiply mode comes in handy. I'm going to open a new layer, clip it to the base layer, and set the new layer's blending mode to multiply. Remember, since multiply acts like a shadow, we don't need to change the color on this layer, so I'm going to use my soft shades brush at a low opacity and gently add some random strokes to create the illusion of a regular grass. Then I'm going to open a new layer for the grass strands. I'm going to set it to multiply, and I'm going to grab my new sketch brush to draw those grass strands. Remember, these don't have to be perfect. A bit of irregularity actually makes them look more realistic, and no grass is perfectly uniform in nature. grass also has lighter strands where the light reflects, and to capture that, let's add those lighter strands by opening a new layer and set it to screen mode. Screen mode acts like a spotlight, making it perfect for this, so we'll keep the same brush and draw those lighter strands among the darker ones, and remember, they don't need to be perfect. I also like to add a bit of extra texture, so let's open a new layer in multiply mode, and I'm going to use my denim brush to achieve this noisy effect. This will help darken the areas where we add texture, creating a more natural shadow effect. To really enhance this texture effect, I like to add another layer in screen mode below all my multiply layers. Remember, screen mode lightens the area you paint on, so I'm gonna grab my denim brush again and paint lightly on this layer to create those highlights. Now that the grass is looking fantastic, it's time to add some flowers to bring our scene to life. I'm going to open a new layer, but this time I'm going to switch to my new sketch brush. I'm going to choose a white color, and I'm going to add some cute daisies here and there. And to finish things off, I'm just going to add a pop of orange to the daisies on a new layer. So there we have it. This is what we can achieve with just one single color, except for the daisies of course, and using both the multiply and screen modes. So if you're looking for ways to add depth and highlights to your digital art, remember that all you need is one color and these two blending modes as tools. But tell me, are there any other blending modes that you love using in Procreate? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this video useful in creating your own blankets and grassy landscapes, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more digital art tips and tricks every Sunday. If you want to follow my creative journey and see my latest illustrations, you can also find me on Instagram at @everlygreenart. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Have a lovely day and see you in the next video. Bye!